Hi everyone, I'm Eric Guriel. I'm the SACNAS National Chapters Manager. I'm pleased to welcome you to this webinar today on Planning for Success, Creating an Individual Development Plan 101. Before we start our main event today, I want to say welcome to our fellow SACNistas and anyone attending a SACNAS event for the first time today. At SACNAS, we're achieving true diversity in STEM by cultivating and celebrating a community where you can be your whole self. Bring your diverse voices, experiences, backgrounds, and talents together and join us as a member today. Now to introduce our moderator, Ernesto Leon is a PhD candidate in the Department of Pharmacology at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Ernesto is also the SACNAS Board of Directors student member and a member of the University of North Carolina SACNAS chapter.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, hi everybody, my name is Ernesto. And today I'm just gonna go quickly over the agenda for the webinar. So the panelists will present you with an overview of the individual development plan. Our panelists are Juan Carlos Ramos and Patricia Silveyra. And these are going to include common challenges and strategies to engage your mentors. I'm going to share a bit about how I've used IDP to get me along in graduate school. And at the end, we'll have a question and answer section. So if you do have any questions throughout the webinar, please go ahead and submit your questions at the Q&A button down here. And so for submitting your questions, please just type them out in the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen. And be respectful of everyone on the line, so please be muted unless you're speaking. And then when asking a question, please first state where you're from and what your first name is so we know to answer your questions. And so I want to start by introducing both of our panelists today. I'll start with Dr. Patricia Silveyra. Patricia is the director of the Biobehavioral Lab at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Her research focuses on sex differences in inflammatory lung disease. And she received her bachelor's and master's degree in molecular biology and biotechnology and her PhD in biochemistry from the University of Buenos Aires in Argentina. Before her position at UNC, she was over at Penn State, where she worked her way from a postdoc researcher to an associate professor. But in addition to her research work, Patricia is actively involved in mentoring students. She's actually our chapter advisor at UNC SACNAS, and a great one, if I might add. She's a National SACNAS board member, and she's a member and co-chair of the National Academies of Sciences New Voices program, and a member of the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine Board of Higher Education and Workforce. And our second panelist is Dr. Juan Carlos Ramos. Juan Carlos is a 3D printing process development engineer at HP. He works at the interface between the research and development and customers to translate the customer's needs into actionable items. Juan Carlos received his PhD in material sciences from a hybrid program between the University of Ciudad de Juárez in Mexico and the University of Texas in Dallas, where he worked in the area of printed electronics. He later postdoced at Oregon State University, where he worked in developing thin films for application in green electronics. In addition to his technical work, he's actively involved in mentoring, entrepreneurship, and relationships with universities for partnerships of technology transfer. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with Patricia and Juan Carlos.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today, as Ernesto just mentioned, we're going to be discussing IDPs, how we use them, and we're going to give you some tips about preparing your IDP, but also we're going to discuss some challenges that you may face when you do your IDP. So those of us who have done some IDPs in the past at different points of our career, we have some things to share with you, and we're here to answer your questions. As Eric said, at SACNAS, our mission is to achieve true diversity in STEM. And we know that for years, the scientific workforce did not reflect the one of the population, and it still doesn't. So by staying in science, you get to change the assumptions and influence what type of science is done. So for too long, and even recently, some of us have been stereotyped into roles that drive bias. And by staying in science, you take control of the narrative. So we want to offer you with some tools so that you can actually, if you have a dream to be a scientist or to succeed in science or to conduct a specific type of research, we want you to be successful. And to be successful, you have to have a plan. So we're going to tell you today about individual development plans. The IDP, or Individual Development Plan, is a dynamic document that identifies and outlines career goals, and is a tool to manage career development throughout your graduate training and beyond. Myself, I didn't have IDP when I was a grad student, but I used them very successfully later in my professional career. Today, we're going to talk more about IDPs for grad students, but know that IDPs can be done at any point of your career, as long as you establish goals and you work towards them. As Juan Carlos said, when we were discussing the slides, you know, the IDPs, what do you want to be when you grow up? You have to think about a goal, and it helps you plan the steps that you need to take to achieve that goal. So, as is indicated in this slide, the IDP includes your career goals. So you're gonna think about your plan if you have one, or an alternative plan if that one fails, or if you're undecided, or you have a big idea. So you have to have a big idea of where do you want to go to get started. And that can change over time. The IDP will help you identify what kind of skills you will need to develop to get working towards that goal. So then the other part of the IDP will be to organize these goals so that you can actually know when are you going to undertake those steps. And you will incorporate feedback that you get from people that know you and people who mentor you. So this is a living document that you're going to be using to enhance your career development. We know that science is evolving, and the type of science that our oldest mentors used to do and the careers that their grad school training was preparing them to do was different than the one that currently you guys are pursuing. There are multiple careers that have been created in the past few years, even after I graduated. So my own students, I sometimes don't have all the tools to advise them. However, there are people who currently assist students on their training, and they publish several publications where you can find tools and strategies that people who have started working towards those careers prepare. So I put here a few relevant resources that I used when I was preparing to become a PI. As you heard, I am an immigrant from Argentina. I moved here when I was a postdoc, so very little I knew about the US system and how to establish a lab and how to write grants and publish papers and become a successful investigator in this country. I took advantage of what others have written, for example, the books that you see in this slide, and I was able to plan how to be successful and how to advance my career. So continuously, there are new techniques, new tools, and what we call alternative careers, which are not alternative anymore. The people who used to think of just the PI career call this alternative, but those of us who know how things have changed, we don't call them alternative anymore. Now there's more emphasis on team and interdisciplinary science. So there are these skills that we sometimes call them soft skills that we need to develop so that we can be better team members, whatever career we follow. And there is demand for new types of knowledge, for data management, for coding, for project management, regulatory science, technology transfer, strategic planning, and more. We will talk about some of those here, and Juan Carlos has more experience in what is outside of academia than I do, but feel free to ask us questions about this. Juan Carlos, you're next.
Yeah. Well, as Patricia mentioned, we need to emphasize on having an idea. It can be a big idea, but we kind of know where we want to go. For instance, I wanted to be a professor when I started my PhD, but at the end, of my PhD, I just didn't want to be a professor anymore. And it seems like I was kind of in agreement with the statistics. As we can see here, and it's hard data, not so new, and it shows that only 1 out of 222 graduates go to be a professor. Many of us, the rest, we go at different to different sites, different as they call alternative careers. At different points, some of the students do it right after they graduate, or some like me go to a postdoc and then we realize like, this is not what I want, or this is just, I found something else that brings me joy. A problem though that we face, many students when we are in the PhD or even in undergrad, is that the academia many times don't show us those alternative paths, especially when the professors have been there for a long time, or they don't have any connections with industry or with the government or so on. They kind of limit the vision, or they don't allow you to have this wider vision or what other things are out there. And other things, and I speak from a personal perspective, is as an international student, I was more limited about the visa. I wanted to work in industry, but then visa was a big thing back then. So I limited myself. I say, okay, I cannot stay in the country, or I have to go for an OPT or so on. So we need to think about possibilities. We're going to talk more about it in detail, regardless of these kind of limitations that we might put on ourselves. We go to the next one. An example here is like, we are talking about IDPs, but what if you don't have one? Myself, like Dr. Patricia, I didn't have one. And you can see how my career path looks like. If I have had one IDP when I was in grad school or undergrad, this path could be shorter or more straight. Now, each of these steps allow me to go to the next move, and I learn. But later, when I started having my my first IDP, which was when at the end of my postdoctoral, the things became more strategic, and that allowed me to have a faster moves, or very mindful moves in my career.
Okay, so as Juan Carlos just mentioned, you need to have a plan, and you have to think about what is limiting yourself when you are planning. Yeah, so that you have to consider a wider vision, but then also take into consideration that sometimes we may not think that we can get some places because of things that were said to us, or because of those biases that I was talking about earlier. So it is important to start planning, and that is the first thing. If you think about your goals, what you want to do, that will motivate you to pursue them. That will motivate you to talk about them with your network. And you may find out that there are people in your network and in their networks that can help you continue and plan better. If you write your goals, it is likely that you are going to make them happen. If you don't write them down, you can still make them happen. But the first step will be to say, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to think seriously about this. So writing down is one exercise that we can do to actually start taking action. If you develop a plan, it is going to be helpful to achieve these goals because the science shows that students who develop plans have better ratings by their advisors, they have few conflicts, and they also publish more. You want to develop and implement strategies that you can use later in your career. So the IDP will also allow you to develop these other skills that they may not specifically pertain to a goal of yours immediately, but they will prepare you for the future, no matter the career you end up doing. Those who plan end up having higher salaries. This is studies, also research studies that show this, more promotions and greater career and personal satisfaction. So planning overall is good. However, planning is hard because we know right now that if you are in a PhD program, I don't know how many of you are students, but those of you who are students, there is somehow a plan around your first few years where you have some classes that you need to take, where you start looking into the labs that you may join, and then you start having to make decisions. And those decisions, sometimes they don't necessarily depend on what you want, sometimes depend on the circumstances available to you. And then after that, in most programs, depending on your particular program, but most of them, you're gonna pass an exam. And then after that, you're gonna be just doing science research, publishing papers until you're ready to defend your dissertation. As soon as you defend, you're graduating and you're ready for the market. So you better start planning early, thinking about what are the prospects for me in the future? What are the things that I am more likely to do, so that you can actually take advantage of the time that you're still in school and you have the network of professors and people ahead of you that can offer you some professional career development and also advice. Because we know that grad school is a roller coaster of emotion that as we progress throughout the years, you go into these ups and downs that are associated with good things that happen and things that sometimes are not as encouraging, like getting a paper rejected, getting a grant rejected, having to switch labs. You know, you can name hundreds of reasons why you may get discouraged from pursuing your goals. And you have to understand that there will be setbacks, but there will be moments where you will recover. And perhaps you will have to redirect your career in a way that is more efficient for your skills, and it will be able to combine what you like to do with what you're good at. So more benefits of preparing an IDP is that it will enable you to assess those skills, those abilities, and think about what you actually want to do. It will help you identify skills that you need to develop in the short term and in the long term. And it can facilitate, or it will encourage, your communication with your mentors or advisors. You're not only there to pursue their science, the science that is happening in the lab, but you also are training yourself for your future career. So you have to slowly learning to incorporate those conversations in your day-to-day science communication. And that is, as you know, not easy. Sometimes, you know, scientists, we like to be in the lab, we like to just talk science, and we like to ignore other things that may be considered distractions for some people. But you are under training and you are preparing yourself for the future. So this has to be part of your training itself. And if it's not encouraging your lab, some people are in labs that are not encouraging. I was in a lab that was necessarily not preparing me for my future, but I went outside of the lab and I met other people, and I was able to take advantage of the environment where I was undergoing my training to get the information and to get the mentoring and networking that I needed to continue reaching my goals. As I said here, you know, your IDP mentor, the person who helps you, or the persons who help you work on your IDP, may or may not be your advisor. Okay, so I said earlier that the IDP is actually the acronym for Individual Development Plan. And in other words, it can be described as, where are you in your career? Where do you want to go? And how are you going to get there? So the IDP is individual because everybody has their own goals, their own skills that they need to develop, and their whole set of values and interests. So you have to prepare your own career plan. You can't just rely on a plan that you sign up that is prepared for you. It is individual, and it takes a significant amount of introspection and, you know, discomfort, as we will discuss soon. The D for development talks about what are the areas where you can improve, where you can develop skills. What do you need to learn to get where you want to get? And the plan part refers to organizing this. So you imagine you have a specific goal and you have 10 skills that you need to develop. You can't possibly learn 10 skills at once. So what you are going to do while you write your IDP is organize in which series or in what order or under what timeline you are going to develop those skills. At the same time, you put everything else that's going on in your life together so that you develop goals that are realistic and that you can accomplish. And the other thing is your goals. You have to be able to know when you have achieved them. where you have to take action. So we will discuss some strategies for doing that. All right, so there are 5 steps for an IDP. This is from Science Careers, which is a website that will help you develop an IDP. We will guide you through it, and we will tell you where to find it. First, you will do your own self-assessment, your own career exploration. Some of you joined school because you had a goal. You wanted to be X profession at X place. Congratulations. That's not the majority of students. Some of us get into school because we're interested in science. We like discovery, right? What kind of careers can I apply to my life so that I can continue developing these interests, right? So you have to think about what do you like to do and what kind of careers I am likely to pursue. The second part is writing the IDP, and then you have to share it. This is uncomfortable because it puts you in a place of vulnerability. Sometimes you have to share things with people that you don't know how they're going to react. They may try to crush your dream, so you have to be prepared for what's coming. But for the most part, you have people that you can trust, you know, and that they're going to give you good feedback, that they're going to give you feedback that you consider is going to be realistic of now. Or sometimes, you know, I share things with people and I know that their feedback is not going to be exactly what I need to hear, and you have to be ready to ignore certain type of feedback. You can revise your IDP as you progress. Maybe you thought you liked something and then you realize maybe it wasn't what you thought it was. You can go back, revise your IDP, and start again. So this is why this is a living document that is not set in stone. But you have to be honest when you are preparing it so that you can better prepare for what's coming. And then you have to start implementing. You know, it's nice to plan it, but then eventually you have to start doing things. So that's another place where we sometimes get blocked because we are afraid of taking action. We'll talk about that. And as I said, revise it periodically. So those are the 5 steps to develop an IDP. But as you know, the plans can be the plans you tell your advisor. You know, I'm going to be a professor like you. The real plan is that you're looking for something else. And the secret plan is that you're going to leave science or do science in different ways. And so your plans may change, and your plans may not be those that you want to share with everyone. Your IDP could be just for you and the people you trust the most. The important thing is that that plan is the plan that better fits yourself. So this is a website. It's called myidp.sciencecareers.org. This webinar is being recorded, so you can enter later. We will show you some screenshots of that website so that you can, explore it later with time. This is not something that you can do in the 15 minutes that you're listening to us here. This is something that is going to require some time of yourself, and you can go in and now you create an account and you will go through the different steps. The steps that are listed here are the ones that I just mentioned. I think Juan Carlos is next.
So let's start dissecting the steps. As we mentioned, the best way is something that you have to do on your own, but it's better if you have a mentor or several mentors, and each of you will play a role. However, you need to be mindful that you are the interested one, and therefore you are the one guiding the conversation and the activities. So the first one is conduct the self-assessment. For me, this is the most complicated one. Could you go to the next one? So the self-assessment. To start, why is it too complicated? Because most of the time, or several times, we go and we try to satisfy other people's perceptions of ourselves. But the thing with the IDP is that if it's not totally honest, it is not really valuable. We have to think about ourselves. And we will evaluate the skills, the personal values, and interest. But it is equally important what we like and what we care about as much as what we don't. Let's say I wanted to be a lawyer and I love it, but I knew that it would drain me to be dealing with this bureaucracy and so on. So like, this will not be the path for me. So a few things that we need to evaluate is the what, means just what you do. You can be a scientist, you can be an engineer not doing science. That's the what. The how is which kind of scientist do you want to be? And I don't mean the field, but how do you do the things? That's the second layer. Think about this as peeling an onion. But the most important part is the why. Why is really connected to your values. And although your interests might change in life, the values are your core. So those don't change that much. And that's why we have to ask ourselves the why as we are taking these decisions, making these decisions. So the second one, once that you do these, the values, interests, and skills, identify what strengths do you have, and then look for areas of improvement. We don't have to improve everything, but we have to improve some of the key ones that we want to, will be more valuable to get us where we want. A tool that has been very useful for me to do the self-assessment is the 360-degree evaluation. This one is, you can Google it, is about, and as I said, there are many things I know about myself that only me know about myself. There are things that other people know about myself that I know about myself too. However, there are some really valuable ones that I have learned through the years. There are many things other people know about myself that I don't see about myself. Some people are like, oh, you are good with working with people, not in just a software way, but you are really good at it. I'm like, okay, thank you. I didn't know that. So try to do the 360-degree evaluation. Just talk to colleagues, your friends, your family, your manager. The idea of the 360 degrees that you look up, down, and to the sides. So look for those that feedback when you can. Thank you. So in the my IDP in sciencecareers.org is where we can find these tools that can help us to get the skills assessment, the interest, and the values. And it's very easy. You go click the 1 to 5 based on your interest or where you think you are at, and it can give you a nice summary that we will see in the next slide. So it gives you at the end a technical proficiency, the communication skills, so soft and hard skills, as well as your interests and values, as we mentioned. So now this is just a tool of many that you can use, but we like this one and it's a good initial test. As I mentioned, career satisfaction will come from the combination of your skills, your interests, and your values. Once that you combine these, doesn't mean that you're gonna get where you necessarily, it won't tell you where you're gonna get, but that means that you will be mostly satisfied with your decision. Now, I challenge you to do this test. It looks very easy. It requires 9 lines. It sounds super simple, but it might take you 1 day, 1 week on doing it. You don't have to do everything in 15 minutes or 1 hour. Patricia, I see her smiling. Yes, we did this exercise before, and it turns out that it's quite difficult with all of them. And it took me like half of a day on actively trying to do it. So, but I challenge you to try it. Now, career exploration is one thing is what I would love to do. I wanted to be an opera singer and I love it. However, I really don't have the voice to be an opera singer. So although I love it, I have to be mindful about the career exploration and explore realistic career opportunities. So here there are some books that you can look at. Another way I do this is I look for LinkedIn or Glassdoor or in ACS or SACNAS in the careers website. And then I look at the job description and I see which points of these job descriptions are very unique for that position in particular. But there are some other are called like class descriptions, which means they are very common. And those will guide me to create this, to define the gap. Those are the skills I have. And these are the other skills that are required. So what is the gap and how I can cover this gap? Now, where to look at? As we've been emphasizing, academia is not the only place. And it's still, even if you look in academia, what in academia you can do? Government, industry, nonprofit, you can create your own company. I have tried so far 3 out of these, and I have gotten something from each of them. And as we mentioned here, no career decision is forever. So you need to just start trying, and you're gonna learn by doing. Now, it's better if you have this plan because it will help you to decide your career progression. Now, something that we need to be very mindful to avoid frustration is that the career progression actually is not only, doesn't always, I would say rarely, it goes in an upward and linear trajectory. Sometimes we have to move laterally or even down to one position so we can learn other skills that we need to have to cover the gap. So now we're gonna combine as well passion. What do I love to do? But then, am I really good at it or just good enough at it? But be careful with this one of the competence. Sometimes, and we're gonna talk about some challenges to define the competency. The other one is, maybe this is my passion, am I really good at it? Yes, but what are the organizational needs? What does not only my company, but the market, what is out there? What is the need right now? For instance, I was more involved in semiconductor processing, but I knew that semiconductor processing was really hard for the next 20 to 30 years. So I have to plan a career change. And I went from, okay, what can I do? Right now is like artificial intelligence. Yeah, but I don't really like to code. And I am a material scientist and I love what I do. What else can I do that will put me in the field for the next 20 years? Boom, I transitioned to 3D printing, which is the future of manufacturing. And seems like I took a good decision, but it was looking at what do I like, what I'm good at, and what are the needs. Next. Yeah. So we were talking about not only where, but what. What can I do? If you go to academia, you can be a tenure track, you can be an instructor, you can be a lab manager. If you go to, you can go to consulting, as I mentioned, finances, military research, patent law, you name it. There are many, many opportunities within each of the fields. Now, it's not only where, but what you're gonna do. And again, I have to emphasize on the why. Why are you doing this? You want to be a manager? Great. Why do you want to be a manager, and what kind of manager you want to be? That will guide you through the decision-making process and find if it aligns with your interests and your values.
Okay, so as Juan Carlos said, you know, you have to look at different options, but where are these options available? You have several resources, some of which we've already shared with you, you know, their websites. I personally look a lot into books. You're gonna see when you read books about career development or leadership that those books guide you through other books. And by just starting reading one book, I ended up reading a number of books that were like collectively gave me so much information that I use to this day. Your mentors are great resources. They have friends, they have colleagues that went to school with them and now are doing something different. Reach out to them, ask for an introduction, ask for an informational interview where you can learn more about those jobs that maybe you heard about, but you really don't have much information to make a decision. Your institution may have a career services office. So you may have resources there that perhaps you don't know about. Professional societies, you know, you belong probably to some as a student member or as a professional member. They do have in their membership a lot of careers. So you can reach out and you can ask to be connected with people doing different type of work. This is what I call strategic networking. So you know where you want to get, and you kind of draw the path. How do I get to that person? How do I get to a person with that profession? So then you just make your plan of, okay, can you connect me with this person? And then that person can connect you with another person, and so on. So you can get different ways to like get in front of somebody that you want to get in front of. Juan Carlos mentioned LinkedIn and Twitter is a great resource. I mean, those of you who use Twitter, I had Twitter for a long time. I haven't used it that much in the past few years, but now I realize it's a great place to network with different type of professionals. In COVID times, there's not much opportunity for social events, but there's opportunity for events like this where you can even in the chat learn from each other, and then you can request information about somebody. And SACNAS, obviously. SACNAS is a very, very diverse organization. We have, even in the board of directors, we have members with careers all over the sciences and even outside of the sciences. Scientific meetings are a great place to network. They may not be available in the current times, but you know, when you're in your poster or when you see a poster about something and you can go introduce yourself, it's a good place to have a one-on-one discussion with a person, have cards, you know, to exchange with people so that you can follow up by email. I have built a lot of my network by just giving cards or coming back to my hotel room after a presentation and sending a follow-up email to the people that I had talked with. As you know, I came from another country. I had nobody in my network here. So I didn't have a PI that would introduce me to their friends. I didn't have people from grad school here. So I had to do a lot of the dirty work, you know, thinking and trying to get to the people that were of influence in my particular area of research so that I could, you know, be invited to give talks, be invited to student study section, and all those things that happen when you have a network. SACNAS offers you the opportunity to talk with the speakers, you know, and it has an exhibit hall. You know, when we next meet in person at SACNAS, take advantage of that. The SACNAS community is full of very successful and very powerful mentors. You know, these are people who really want to help, who really want to change the narrative, and who really want to mentor you. This is a picture from the Advanced Leadership Institute that I did a few years ago. You can even see here there's the future president of SACNAS on the right side, and you probably can identify one at least, if not all the members that are in this group. These are mentors because these are people like me who have walked a path and have learned a lot, and we want to share it with you. We want to help you be successful, and we want to help you not to make the same mistakes we made. And we also want you to take advantage of the lessons that we have learned. So another exercise that you are going to be doing, we're not going to do them now, but another exercise that you can do to start thinking about your long-term goals is to think about what is your career path, your potential career path, but also have an alternative. So you think about two. If you don't know, you make your best guess. But by having two options, you don't put all the your effort into just one, and you also keep your mind open. So they recommend to start with two, and then make a plan, and then as you progress in your IDP, you narrow it down to one, or maybe a combination of those two, or maybe a new one that is none of those because you discarded them by planning. So just when you are doing your IDP preparation and after you've taken your test, you can start by writing those career paths as an exercise. Remember, writing is an important part of the process. So when you are ready to write the IDP, you can reach out to your mentor to get feedback and to help you overcome initial challenges. We, as your speakers today, are serving as your mentors by already telling you what's going to happen to you and some of the things that you can do about it. So writing the IDP will allow you to identify your career trajectory. This could be limited to your grad school years, or it could be beyond, thinking about, you know, what's going to happen 5 years, 10 years, 20 years after you graduate. You will list specific skills and strengths you need to develop from what you know, because the career you end up doing may not exist today. It may be created in the next 5 years. We don't know. But for what you know right now and for your career path that you just thought about, you can list, okay, what do I need to learn? For example, I knew I wanted to lead a research team, So I needed to develop networking skills. I needed to overcome my fear of speaking in public. Look at me speaking now. If you saw me the first day I moved to the US, I was reading with my English-Spanish dictionary, trying to like put words together. I was terrified of saying a word. But I practiced, I met with people, I took training, I got a coach. So I just got help to overcome that, and I did it. But if I didn't plan, if I just sat waiting for things to happen, I would not be here right now. You can define approaches and timeframes to obtain the skills. This is very important because if you are like me, you want to do everything at once. And then when you start, everything falls apart. So you have to be strategic about how you implement your plan and how do you plan it around the multiple things that are happening. Especially now, where we don't know when we're going back to the lab, when we're going to finish our experiments, when are we going to do what. At the same time, some of us are more time at home right now, and there are available opportunities online that we can take advantage of. So you can reassess with the current times your IDP so that you can continue to work towards your goals. It's important that you discuss your IDP with someone. Ideally, it will be your mentor in your lab, but if that's not a possibility for challenges that we will discuss soon, just find a mentor. Find a SACNAS mentor. SACNAS has a one-on-one mentoring event every year at the meeting where you can get to be paired with a SACNAS leader, and then by email, by Zoom, you can share your IDP and get feedback. And it's important to revise it periodically because things change. But writing it down, I cannot stress that enough. It is very, very, very important. Okay, so some of the challenges. Thinking about the future is very, very stressful, especially now, right? It always is, but currently it is even more stressful. So, you can write down ideas, you can use pencil and paper. It's a way to engage your senses in the process of thinking. And, you can cross things off and just deal with the emotions that you're going through when you are thinking about, okay, I need to make this decision about my life. I am going to put all this effort into this particular goal. But the good thing is that the IDP can be revised. It can be changed at any point, and it can be improved or it can get better as long as you incorporate more and more information. So it's important to talk to the people that know you and know things that you may not know about you. Like Juan Carlos said, you may not need to do it formally with a 360 evaluation, but just talk to the people you trust. You have friends, you have colleagues, you have family. I talk to my grandma. I'm sure some of you do too. So they know so much about you, and sometimes we get so concentrated in one thing because it is the thing that is being told to us that we don't realize that maybe that's not what we really value or that we really want to do. So I just put here a comic about the existential crisis, which we all go through, even PIs do. At some point, as this correlates with the roller coaster I mentioned earlier, where we just have these ups and downs. And when we're planning the future, it is likely that we're going to start feeling a little bit stressed and anxious. Your next one, Carlos? Or I continue? Continue.
You continue.
Okay. Okay, so as I said, we all face challenges. These are some comics about, you get a daily existential crisis and then you go back to work, or you have an idea about something great you want to do and then it falls apart. And in academia, we have other challenges that are associated with the nature of our work. We are used to read scientific papers that are like very curated and they have super successful experiments and super detailed results. And we think that that paper was done in a day, right? Like we don't know how many setbacks the investigators had. That paper you're reading may have taken 20 years, 10, 20 years to be developed, and multiple failed ideas. So a lot of times when we're new in science, we think that everything should work. And when things don't work in our hands, we think that maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe this is not for me. So it is important that you talk to people, because nobody gets the experiment done in the first time. We all face challenges. PIs, we get, for every 10 grants that I send, 9 get rejected, and sometimes the 10 get rejected. So we have to be conscious of the fact that nobody's perfect, and the fact that something may not be working for you doesn't mean that you're bad at it. But when you're planning your IDP, it's important to set what we call the SMART goal. SMART goals come from an acronym, actually, even though they are smart. A SMART goal, you may have heard this in other instances, but SMART stands for specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound. For example, a not SMART goal would be to be more productive. What does that mean? Does that mean 1 paper a week? Does that mean finishing an email I just started writing? What does it mean? You have to be specific about what you mean by being productive. Making new contacts. Where? With whom? For what? Winning a Nobel Prize. Well, that may be a little bit more specific, but it may not be super realistic. As a grad student, I don't think I know any grad students who win a Nobel Prize. You may have that ambition, but know that it may not be as realistic as you think. Solve word hunger. Think about my career. Like, that's not even specific, Okay, I'm gonna think about it. What does it mean? And your life ambition may change. You may have big ideas or big goals as you start, and then reality sets in, and then you have to reassess those goals and make them more tailored to what the things that you're actually able to do. Yeah, so you see there a very extreme example from somebody who was doing a Nobel Prize and then gets really excited to just have pizza at the seminar. This is just a joke, but what I mean is you may discover as you do your plan that your goal may be a little bit more narrow, but that doesn't make it less important.
I think that I would like to add here for the goals is, although there is a structure for them, for me, a good way to start is how done looks like. But when I say how done, it means that I have metrics, I have a time, and they are action oriented because I did something. So how done looks like.
All right. Okay, so to set your personal goals, refer back to your skills assessment workshop. You do that test. It's like, when I was younger, I would do those tests in the magazines, to see like what kind of person you are for whatever. Yeah, so, those things are just a guide. But then you start writing your own goals, and then think about how can I improve as a professional, or as a person in the areas that I think I may need better. Like for me, it was learning to speak more fluently, learning more vocabulary in English, and that was an initial goal so that I could improve in other areas. And then it came writing grants in the learning about the US system. So everybody's going to have different goals depending on where they are and where they want to go. But it's important to put a timeline so that you don't try to do everything at once, or you don't put everything for later. It's important that those are realistic, and that is where having another pair of eyes looking at your plan is important, because a mentor may tell you if something may be off or it may need some revision. So your plan and your reality may not go hand in hand, so sometimes you have to do some reassessment. So the important thing about having an IDP is that you can revise and you can reassess, and you have this dynamic way of dealing with this. All right, so sharing it is a little hard, as I already mentioned, and your mentor, whoever is your IDP mentor, or your multiple mentors, will give you feedback. When you are prepared to do this sharing, especially if you're going to do it with your PI, it's important that you don't do it when you're discussing something else. So you make an appointment specifically to talk about this. You give them an agenda. You tell them, I am going to talk about my IDP. If you want, you can send them a draft. If not, you can just say, I am going to be talking about this. So we're not going to talk about the experiment I'm doing this week. We're going to talk about this. And the person who's meeting with you designates this time. This is important. Sometimes well, right now you meet virtually, most of us virtually, but if you were in the lab, try to do it somewhere else. Like I don't know, go somewhere that is not, your PI's office. Maybe you want to go to the hallway, maybe we're in the library, maybe you want to go coffee shop on campus. That helps because if you are in the lab, at least for me, the problem was that somebody would knock on the door or somebody would come and ask me for something, or my timer would go off, so try to eliminate other distractions if possible. And, you are getting ready to have a potential conflict, a potential difficult discussion. So one of the strategies is to start, with something positive and then start bringing, I feel like I am making a lot of progress on this and that. I'm happy about this paper that we're working out. But I feel like I need to develop X, Y, or Z skill, or I would like to go to this training, or, you just bring it slowly. Don't just go and push for something that may be a conflict, if you think it's going to be a conflict. One of the things that they recommend is that you don't just share the whole thing with the timeline and everything, so that you do it in parts. So first you share your goals, and then you may share what you're going to do in the next year. And then slowly you make the progress in when you're doing your revisions, you incorporate more things because you may have spent a lot of time preparing this, but the person who's receiving it has to absorb all that information at once. So that may help in the communication if you do it in parts. And again, as I mentioned, if you may have to negotiate, you may have to deal with conflict. Some PIs don't want you to be doing anything that is not just pipetting for their project, and then you have to acknowledge that. If that is the case, try to talk to the people that are more senior than you. Try to talk to people who have similar type of PIs. Or don't share it with your PI. Share with someone that knows about the field, but it's not going to get on your way. So you have to be strategic about how you're going to do this, but it's important that you share it with someone. All right, so then the last 2 steps is to actually do it, implementing the plan. Once you have a plan, you implement it, and then whoever's mentoring you helps you. If you need to take a training, if you need to learn some skills, if you need to do a rotation, if you need to get connected with someone, your mentor may facilitate those things. And the last step is revising. Sometimes we recommend every 6 months. Some programs encourage you to have IDPs. Some of you, if you write F grants, and a lot of those mentoring plans, you have to write that you're going to do an IDP, and you will do an IDP. So it's part of your training sometimes. So you put the plan into action. That means you do it, and then you review, you adjust, and you update it. This is recommended to be done every 6 months, as I mentioned. And you'll see that it will change over time, that it will not look the same initially than the way it looks at the very end of your training. My graduate student revised it every 6 months, and you can see how she was progressing, because initially she thought she needed more skills, and then as she realized what she wanted to be doing, she modified things and narrowed it down and got rid of some things that she planned initially. As you progress, you may need to discuss it with others. So, use your network. Juan Carlos, you want to add anything here? No? Okay. And plan the meetings. PIs, we are busy. So the person on the right, that's basically me. All of those things that you see there, I am doing currently. So, but that doesn't mean we don't know how to plan. If we're able to do all those things, it's because we know how to manage our time. But you can't just show up with an IDP and pretend that I'm going to have time to read it and give you feedback immediately. So plan a meeting, organize a time, make sure that you dedicate that time, that you have an agenda, that you let them know what the meeting is about, so that you make the best out of your meeting and nothing gets on the way of your discussion. I already said this. Sometimes some people have a formal document, that you say, okay, this is my IDP plan, and we're going to meet every 6 months, and you just put the date on the calendar. You share the calendar, you share an invite, and then if in 6 months you're not ready, you may reschedule. So sometimes I just overschedule things with people that I want to meet with, and then, for example, I have collaborators that are in other institutions, and I just put a meeting every month, and if 1 month we're not ready to discuss something, we remove that meeting. But instead of trying to schedule a new meeting, that is an easier way. So you may want to do that. Some people do like a confidentiality agreement. Like, let's say if you have a mentor that may have a conflict, if you don't want them to discuss with your PI, you may have a more formal document where you say, okay, you are my IDP mentor, I ask you that you don't share anything. That's just more extreme, and it's more used when you are like a junior faculty. Junior faculty, they may be in one institution and there may be conflict. If they share some plans, let's say they want to move somewhere else, so then they get a mentor from outside. Yeah.
Similar in industry, I have my IDP, I share something with my boss, but I know that my boss is not too happy with me moving to some other areas of business I want. So actually my IDP, it is, I share it with people who is in the position I want to go. And it's most likely outside of my business area, so I don't have to connect, or my boss doesn't have to know every detail. They know I have one, but they don't have to know every detail.
We're almost done. Other common challenges that we see are imposter syndrome. You probably heard about it. Having some anxiety about sharing the plan, having conflict with your mentor, stereotype threat. That is something that has happened to me a lot. And that means, you're stereotyped to have certain careers, so you think that you're not good at something because of lack of representation of people that look like you in the career you want to pursue. You may have confidence issues to work with. I had a lot of confidence issues earlier in my career, and I still do. But good things you can do: you can get training, you can get coaching, you can read books, you can learn from your peers, and you can change the people that are giving you advice. If they're not being supportive, you may need to reconsider that. Because science is already hard, so now we're adding something else, that is going to be hard to do. I put there that book about networking because that's something that Juan Carlos was saying, that he initially had trouble learning how to network. And for me, I read that book because I just didn't know where to start, and it was a wonderful guide for me to move forward. All right, so we're gonna end the presentation. Here's my email. You can find me on Twitter if you have questions, and none of what I shared is not under my IDP science. We just wanted to give you the perspective of our experiences, Juan Carlos and I, but we're happy to coach you in any way that is helpful. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
Feel free to contact us. I have my LinkedIn profile in there. That's the best way.
Excellent. Just to address anybody's question about the slides or webinar being recorded, yes, it is recorded and it will be available for everybody later today. We have maybe no time for any additional questions because it is 4 o'clock now. But like they said, if you have any questions, reach out to them. Their contact information will be posted along with the webinar probably, and it's in the slides, so you'll be able to see that. Eric, do you want to go ahead and say something?
Yeah, Ernesto, if you actually don't mind, I think if you share your component of the webinar, we might go over just a little bit past the hour, but this, as Ernesto mentioned, this webinar will be available for anybody who does need to leave
And we will send the slides. So if somebody asked that, so yes, we will.
Perfect. Yeah. So I want to make sure, Ernesto, that you have the time to share your component of it as well. And again, we can share this recording with everybody else who needs to leave at this point.
Yeah, of course. So I did my first IDP earlier this year, and it was sometime around March when this whole COVID situation was happening. And I had this IDP, I had a similar IDP workshop led by Patricia that we had for the chapter here at UNC. And it kind of just helped me outline. I took the IDP assessment just to see kind of like what they would recommend, what skills I was eligible, or what skills are good for me. But then when I started working on my IDP, I just kind of broke it up into different sections. So the first section that I had was courses, because I'm a graduate student. So I needed to keep track of like what courses that I needed to take, what courses like are required by my funding. So I got recently funded. So they made me take an additional 3 classes. When am I going to take these classes and how those are going to work? I have another section called research plan. And there it is, kind of just looking at my experiments and like my different projects and where I kind of want to be when I'm at those different times. So spring semester, summer semester, fall semester 2020, and then spring 2021, kind of where I want to be at, with my project, and what key experiments need to get done in order to move on and move forward. Then I have something where it's personal development. So it's not just strictly about just graduate studies and what courses and stuff I need to take, but it's more about, how am I going to improve my communication skills? How am I working towards giving better lab presentations and stuff like that? So seminars in my department. And I also have a section there that's about community service and leadership experience. To me, that's something that's very important. And so I have that as my IDP section as well, just to kind of like understand where I want to move forward after I'm here, and how I can make those skills even better. And lastly, I have 2 more sections. One is a career development, where I kind of there's not much that I can do right now, but it's more like, hey, make sure to update your CV every 6 months. Hey, there's this conference coming up, SACNAS 2020, put that on your calendar. How's that going to help you? And then like maybe for spring 2021, maybe start looking at internships for the summer. I do want to do an internship. So kind of just having that on the schedule, just so I can know where to guide myself to. And the last thing that I have on my thing is like a wish list, right? Like what is something that I may not see in the foreseeable future, like a conference because of COVID, but something that I want to do at some point, maybe next year. So something that's on there is like one of the conferences that is specific towards my field. And I've shared this with 2 of my committee members. I've shared this with people from my funding agency, and I've sat down and talked to my PI about it, just so she knows that I'm interested in doing an internship, right? That's how it kind of brought up. So it's like, hey, I want to do an internship next year. What do I need to do to be in a good spot to maybe have that option a year from now? So I think those are certain ways that an IDP has helped me structure where I am in the PhD program and how I can get to graduation ultimately, right?
Ernesto, maybe do you want to just answer or ask a couple questions, maybe from that list we had earlier?
Of course, yeah. So, I mean, one of the questions that we have for the panelists is, how do you identify and set realistic goals, which is something that we kind of just covered over the SMART goals. But one question that I had here is, how can professionals guide students to develop and maintain this IDP? And maybe this is a question more for Juan Carlos.
How can professionals help? Well, first of all, reach out to us. As I mentioned, I like to be involved in academia. I volunteer a lot with SACNAS and ACS. So that's the way I stay connected. And that means that if I am volunteer there, is because I am open to receive questions and comments. That's the first one. The other one is, well, first reach out to us. The other one is have specific asks that will help us to help you. And share what your interests are. That's it. Then I can find a way. If I don't have the tools or resources, most likely I will have someone in my network who can help you. And if I will reach out to this person and channel you through them, it's because they are open to help.
Yeah, as a professor and a mentor, if a student comes to me with a draft of an IDP, that's like a dream come true, because sometimes they come and they say, oh, well, I want you to mentor me, but I don't know anything about this person. So I can start talking about what I do, but little do I know that this is compatible with your interests and your values and your passion. So the more you can share with us, the better. And an IDP, I think it puts some of that information already in writing. And even if if you have trouble describing them, we can read through that and we can help you work through that. So yeah, if you are searching for a new mentor or a person that you look up to, or you think you want to have a similar career path, if you prepare your own IDP draft and you start with that as maybe an excuse to start networking, that's even better than me maybe wasting your time telling you about things that you may not find that are useful.
Another question that we have for both of you is, how do you build your IDP if you're still not sure of what route you want to take versus it be academia or industry?
The recommendation that I give to students that are still undecided is to take the best guess. You may not be so sure about it, but there is something that is definitely a no, and you cross it. And then of all the things that you know that exist, you have, I recommend to start with two, just the two top best guess. And then it kind of changes over time. I had a student I was advising, he was close to finishing. And yeah, he had one idea and then another one and then another one. And we kind of went through several ideas and developed plans for each of those. And eventually he found what he wanted to do. Sometimes you just need to start doing the work, even if it's not exactly what you're going to end up doing.
Yeah, I think we talk about some of these one during the presentation. The self-assessment, I think, is the most important part. Find what do you like and what you don't. As I mentioned, both are equally important. And although you can have 2 or 3 paths still, this self-assessment, if you do it well and in an honest manner with yourself, it will help you to narrow it down. And talk to the people. Talk to the people. If you want, being a professor is one of them, talk about them. How is a day in their life, doing their job, and what like them, but also what they don't. Same thing, go to industry or to government or whatever you are interested in, and talk to the people and describe what do they do and what they dislike.
Well, thank you, everybody. I want to go ahead and I think just wrap it up here. I want to thank all of our speakers and our attendees for participating in this webinar. I do want to share to please submit your feedback on the post-webinar survey. You'll probably see that prompt as you close out of this webinar. If not, you'll receive an email follow-up after this asking you to provide that information. So that would be super helpful for us. And then finally, I wanted to share the next steps so that you can watch any of our future webinars or watch any of our previously recorded webinars, including this one, is if you go to SACNAS.org, click on the What Do We Do tab, and then click under webinars. There is where you'll see all of the SACNAS webinars. So again, thank you to everybody and have a great day.